Hi, Elizabeth Irwin, ABC 15 News. In the Yavapai County report, there was some information about cell phones that were able to be taken from the site and deciphered. What information from those cell phones were you able to gather that factored into your report?
Some of the cell phone information you will see in the report was up to that communication period of 1604. And that's why we feel that the crew started moving after 1604. At the time, they were at that lunch, what we call the lunch spot on the map. A few of them had their cell phones out and were using them. The fire was starting to move to the south towards Yarnell. When the crew started moving, the cell phones went into the packs, into the pockets. There was no more information after that point on cell phones.
Thank you, Jim. Next on our side. Okay. Young lady here in the blue.
Jill Monier, Fox 10 News in Phoenix. You talked about making sure wildland firefighters see this report and the importance of, sorry, I'm losing my train of thought, lessons learned. If you're a wildland firefighter hotshot looking at this, what are the lessons learned? What do you take away from this? Is there one thing in particular?
I think, and the report is designed really on that learning end of trying to put you in the boots of those firefighters. And we do that for the firefighters. We do that so they can see and they can look at what the possible decision points were and what the alternatives might have been. And what kind of decisions you make as a firefighter under those situations. It's geared towards for them to look at that and to say, you know, I can see why they made that decision, and I can also see some things that we might have made a different decision, we might have made the same decision. But get in the boots of them, learn by looking at that, and then discussing different questions. We've got questions in that learning document that deals with the firefighters, deals with the incident management part of it, and deals with the agency administrators. How do you learn from a firefighter? What do you do different in, whether it's in Florida, whether it's in Washington, or whether it's in Arizona? What do you do? What do you do based on those questions? How do you address them? Think about it ahead of time. So when you do experience it, the potential for it, you know what to do.
Yes, sir. Right here, brown shirt.
Brian Mockenhoff from the Atlantic Magazine. The report seems to focus mostly on the intention and the movements of the hotshots. Did the investigation team look at whether the incident managers had sufficient awareness of where their crews were at? And during that 30-minute gap in communication, should the incident managers have been making calls out to the hotshots to find out where exactly they were at, given that the fire had turned so volatile?
We did look at the communications and the process that took place, especially with that incoming team. Now keep in mind, that team had just taken command at 10:22 was when the new IC was announced. Almost immediately, fire is pushing into the northern part of that area, the Model Creek, Peoples Valley area. And so they're heavily focused on structural protection and the resources that they have there. There was ongoing communication with the crew throughout the day between the air attack, between various components, and the last known communication we have is between the ops chief and the crew that took place at approximately 15:50, which would have been just a few minutes before they started their movement. They had talked, and the crew had said, no, we're fine, we're here in the block.
And let me just add to that a little bit. That 30-minute time period where operations, as Mike just said, had talked to the crew, had said they were good in the black up there. At that same time, you're evacuating Yarnell and you're evacuating firefighters that were working between Yarnell, just north of Yarnell, trying to put in a line. And they had a pull-out, so you're dealing with them. And the management and operations and the air attack has got Granite Mountain in the black up there. And so they're concentrated on making sure the evacuation of those resources that were to the north of Yarnell are moving out. And they kind of got them in a safe zone up in the black. So that 30 minutes, in a way, you think, when you think that they're in the black, you think they're safe. And and that communication was that process of not, I guess, not knowing of their movement.
Thank you, Jim. Next. Gentleman over here behind you, Bill, on the right, right there in front. We'll start with the gentleman there.
The report talks about culture.
Name and
Joe Dana, 12 News. The report talks about the culture of the fire crew. Chief Willis stated publicly he believed that the crew descended into the canyon to protect the ranch. Are those comments indicative to any of you of perhaps a different kind of culture in this hotshot crew, of how they do their jobs, or why they might need the black, or when they may go to protect the structure? And can you comment on the culture of this crew in terms of safety guidelines?
This actually applies to all of the wildland fire community. The urban interface is the ultimate challenge because there are structures and there is a focus at times to try and protect and provide security to those communities that are there on the boundary as fires are coming out. But the reality is, with this crew, as with any of the hotshot crews that we have, they're wildland firefighters. They do not identify themselves in any other way other than a wildland firefighter. What we know is that the crew was moving down to the ranch. That is definitive. What we don't know is what they were intending to do once they got to the ranch. But there is a culture. The culture is focused on suppression and wildland firefighting. Structure, we teach our wildland firefighters how to operate in the structure environment dealing with the urban interface, but they are not structural firefighters themselves, nor do they take on that role. But sometimes they're put into that position to try and prepare an area before the fire reaches.
Thank you, Mike. Next, I had a hand over here a moment ago. Yes, right there with the white hair.
Yeah, John Gordy from Investigative Media. If I'm hearing this straight, they were in the black in the safe zone. The ranch was also in a safe zone, but they weren't going down there for structural protection. So the ultimate question remains that we've had for months now is why would the crew move from a safe zone to another safe zone, going through the green and down into a chimney? I think we need a direct answer to your conclusion here instead of this kind of dancing around here. It appears like there was a tremendous mistake made here. Was there?
The 19 firefighters that moved down to that safe zone, that information is with them. It's not with us. We don't have, and everybody we interviewed, in the information we gathered, it says exactly why they made that move. But the Boulder Springs Ranch was very much a safe zone. And we do have communications from Division Alpha that says we're moving through our escape route to our safety zone. And the reason we say in our conclusion is we feel, as a team, we feel they were moving to their safety zone, and then with the ability to re-engage, is they would be closer to their equipment, closer to their other crew member, and closer to the other fire resources. We don't know that information. We don't have it. That decision-making process went with those 19 men.
Thank you, Jim. Next, let's go with the young lady right here. I'll work my way up to you folks.
Going back to those National Interagency Fire Center guidelines, I know you say you don't have a second report, but was a second report ever drafted, or was it given to somebody else? Was it destroyed? Did you not follow that guideline?
That guideline is exactly that. It's a guideline. It's not even adopted by the state. And when we started this report, it was only adopted by one federal agency in early July. That's a guideline. I have absolutely no other report. I've not even considered another report. The report that the state of Arizona has now is the only report they will ever receive from me.
If you track back to the website where you find that report, when we were assigned on July 2nd and we arrived in Phoenix, that report didn't even exist. There was still the 2005 Serious Accident Investigation Guide that was on the website. That report was added to the website as a brand new report 2-3 weeks ago. Really didn't track that.
But prior years had the same guidelines.
I'm sorry.
Prior years had those guidelines existed for years prior, at least back to 2011.
It has been around for a while, but again, it's not adopted by all agencies, and in this situation, it is not adopted by the states.
Yes, here in the front.
Jeff DeVin, I'm an independent reporter. You were talking about the fact that there was some use of cell phones that were put in their pockets shortly before this so-called blackout time. I'm kind of curious, was there ability to get radio signal to their location? Was there cell signal in their location at that time? Or was the topography and the weather conditions preventing any contact with them whatsoever? Or was it just elective by them not to make contact with anybody?
And you will read in the report at 1637. That was the first time that Division Alpha came back on the radio as they moved. And they may have elected not to communicate outside because they were just walking, they were moving. But at 1637, he made an unsolicited call to the aerial suppression module airplane that flew over that was guiding the air tanker, the DC-10, and looking at a route to place in front of Yarnell as the fire was to the east and advancing towards Yarnell. At 1637, he made a call, and he stated that was a good place to put the air tanker drop north of Yarnell. Unsolicited, so he had radio communications, and then 2 minutes later is when they realized that the fire had come around the corner of the canyon.
And we did ask for the tracking data because you can track cell phones to identify, but when we asked for that data, there aren't enough cell towers in the area that they can use for triangulation, so we weren't able to use that as a tool.
Okay. Gentleman right there, second one back.
Joe Sharkey from Al Jazeera America. Back to the family meeting, which was obviously enormously difficult for you guys. Can you give me some specifics on what the source of the pushback and the anger that you talked about was?
I think from the families, and it was tough. It was tough for me. It was tough for all of us, and it was very tough for them. Just having to redo it. Communication, that time period that you talked about, that 30 minutes, and the tracking, those two things are two things that they feel that's where the Wildland Fire Department needs to go. Those were probably the two issues that they talked about the most, but it was tough. It was gut-wrenching time.
Okay, young lady right there, the four rows back.
Hi, I'm Cindy Garcamogan with the Los Angeles Times. According to the report, it seems that all policies were followed. So my question is, does it stand to say that unless current policies are changed, that this kind of tragedy could happen again?
Part of this report is to help the firefighters learn from it. I think you will see changes into the future here. But right off the bat, the first step is the firefighters being able to read this report and to learn from it, to analyze it, to ask the questions that are in it. And that whole process is geared towards preventing this type of incident.
Jackie, the gentleman on the left-hand side there, in front of the cameras, raising his hand.